From the Edge of the Web studios, here's what we're looking at this week.
So welcome to Edge of the Web news brief this week. This is the Site Strategic Digital Marketing News Desk. This is also the bonus news podcast and video for the Edge of the Web radio episode 363. And I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. Joining me this week to get her take on this week's digital news is Jessica Bowman, author of the Executive SEO Playbook. Jessica, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome, And we certainly want to entreat our listeners who are listening to this podcast to jump over to the full interview linked in the descriptions and whatnot. So make sure you check out what we've talked about over the entire course of the interview regarding training inside of an SEO team in larger organizations. But we wanted to pivot around to this week's news, and there was certainly a lot of news to take a swing at over at social media today from Andrew Hutchinson. Twitter outlines specific details of the recent hack. There's 130 accounts that were impacted. Personal information was actually compromised as well as this investigation. If you didn't know about the hack, that happened on Wednesday. And some pretty important people in the Twitterverse were actually affected. As this investigation continues, on late Friday night, Twitter provided an update on the latest information about the recent hack, which targeted the accounts of several high-profile users. To recap the situation, around 1 p.m. on Wednesday, several celebrity accounts began tweeting out similar odd messages regarding a Bitcoin giveaway. Maybe nothing suspect there at all. So some of the individuals, Twitter explained here, shortly after we became aware of this ongoing situation, we took preemptive measures to restrict functionality for many Twitter accounts, including things like preventing them from tweeting or changing passwords. We also locked the accounts where a password had been recently changed out of the abundance of caution. So the message was as uniformly, it was positioning them different postings around Bitcoin. But some of the users here, let's see here, who were they? I think I
saw Elon Musk.
Elon Musk
was Obama also.
Barack Obama.
I sent him some Bitcoin and no.
Jeff Bezos.
Yep.
From Amazon, Kim Kardashian, and more. Twitter users quickly established that these accounts had been hacked, but not before around $300,000 worth of Bitcoin had been sent through these listed addresses. That's a $300,000 grab right there. My gosh. Why would you actually do that on any Twitter link to begin with?
Like send money?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll say this. A lot of people with Bitcoin have been in Bitcoin for a long time. And so it might be like if I saw Elon Musk say, if you send here, I'll double it back.
Right.
And it's like, this is $5 worth of Bitcoin I had. Yeah, it's worth more today, but I don't know. Could be people taking that risk. I don't agree with it. I wouldn't have sent it.
It's not as bad as the clicking on the email for for the Nigerian prince that's coming across, and
that's not real.
That's not real. Please don't click on those.
I've got to make some changes.
Jessica, sorry. What are your thoughts about this hack that happened last week?
It is quite fascinating, and it really just shows. Kind of the susceptibility of some of these even large corporations. So I think even mid-sized companies need to really take a look at some of their security.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is that it's not an email that actually came through. So, I mean, it's just a tweet and a tweet link.
Yeah.
And
they have every resource at their disposal for excellent security. Some of the best in the world are probably at Twitter.
Yep. So. You better believe it. So be on the lookout. And how about just from a policy, don't click on a tweet from one of your favorite celebrities and give them money. They don't need it, right? And if they're making some financial stock predictions or Bitcoin predictions, give it a moment. Just don't click on the tweet. It's a public service announcement, please.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so there are some additional ripples according to this hack over at search engine land from Barry Schwartz. Google search drops tweet carousels after the Twitter hack. Google has removed the prominent Twitter carousel of tweets from the Google search result pages after many prominent Twitter accounts got hacked on Wednesday. So, yeah, it does have effects, and I mean that was very, very short, right after the actual event. So, I mean, there's a lot of different feeds and information that are very visible and searchable. That's why that's what Google has been doing for the longest time. You do need to pay attention to your accounts, and you do need to pay attention to regularly your access to your accounts. Now, with search actually responding like this, that's pretty darn responsive. So, what do you think about that from a it doesn't show me when they actually shut that down, but it was in pretty close moments. Actually, Brody SEO actually took some screen grabs of when it was actually happening. He was seeing a number of changes in the carousel soon thereafter. So, Jessica, what are your thoughts about Google being as responsive as it was?
I think it's really awesome how responsive they were. It also made me wonder, maybe it's a little conspiracy-ish, but I actually sat back and said, I wonder how often they do take massive action like this
Right.
behind the scenes, and we don't even know it. So I'm wondering if this is actually the kind of thing that happens more often. This was just very visible because the carousel was removed.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. There's a number of charts on display on this particular article from 5 blocks. He shared a chart whenever all the queries that were coming up were dropping the search feed. So
Right.
that was a dramatic change, right? And I think
Dramatic.
that's also something else, is that it was just gone. You know.
I think it would be really interesting for companies to go back and look at their data.
Mm.
And with a lot of the analytics tracking tools, you can identify those keywords that had Twitter carousels on them, I believe.
Yep.
And for those keywords, look at your before and after traffic. And this will start to give you some metrics around what is the impact when Google adds or removes a carousel. Now, I don't think it's an action item. I think it's interesting data to have on hand for executive conversations, especially as you start, pushing the agenda or the roadmap. We need to start digging deeper in our keyword targeting strategy in order to continue growing over time. Looking for some of those keywords that are not triggering these Google, I call them Google modules, but the components that are kind of grabbing some of that SEO traffic before it hits the organic listings.
Sure. To your point, this may have been happening a number of times with Google removing that. This was just a wholesale drop out of all search, right?
Exactly. So we're able to see, that before after that we haven't been able to see in a very long time, or
Right.
maybe ever in such a distinct period of time.
Yeah. So
And
I mean,
that's gonna be really good data.
it does go to the conversation. Again, it's not an action item, but it does go to the conversation of education towards executives, is that this is
Absolutely.
not always here. And on top of everything else, Google is quite reactionary now, and they will be removing different pieces on a particular SERP. So whenever you go into the executive's office and the executive's asking, why aren't we number one? Well, they actually move the pieces around a little bit on the board here, and be able to have that type of contextual conversation, I think is paramount whenever you're trying to get these key concepts across. Would you agree?
Right. Yep, absolutely.
Excellent. All right, so I'm sure you would agree with me that Ahrefs is a fantastic tool set for SEO. I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but maybe she will. I think I just
I
did,
have
didn't
a
I?
client that uses them, and she gets some really cool data
Very
to
cool.
develop some calculations and predictions of SEO lift or drop from changes on the site.
Absolutely. It's a great competitive analysis tool. Their tools show you how your competitors are getting traffic from Google and why. You'll see the pages, the content that send them the most search traffic, as well as the keywords they're ranking for and why they're ranking. So it's a great way to deconstruct an SEO campaign of another competitor, but it also gives you some great planning tools as well to be able to go after your campaign strategy. So we're proud to have them as a continued sponsor on Edge of the Web. And if you're interested, jump over there. Got some fantastic tools like the site audit is a healthy, very robust tool they're putting a lot of time in. And it's one of the best deep analysis tools for a large website that I've seen in a very long time. Check them out over at ahrefs.com. You can actually, I think they have a trial still going 7 days for $7, $1 a day, and you'll have the entire application at your disposal. And I guarantee you're going to like it. So, hey, drop us a line. Let us know if you've actually heard Ahrefs from this show. And if you've given it a try, we'd love to let them know that our listeners are trying out that tool set. So give us a shout over at info@edgeofthewebradio.com. All right, last article that I wanted to tee up for Jessica here, and it was quite poignant for an SEO concept from Search Engine Journal. Google's John Mueller, who will be on the show very soon, he's saying, this is an article from Matt Southern, by the way, search is not a science. In the latest episode of Google's Search Off the Record podcast, which has Gary Ish, Martin Split, and John Mueller, it's the Web Trends Analyst team. They're talking about SEO, and John jumps into the significance of different ranking factors. But he also says something pretty astute, and something that we always need to keep an eye on is one. He had two frames of mind when it comes down to ranking factors. One, search is not a science, which I'm sure there's a number of contenders wanting to argue that particular point. And then two, things change over time, just like we were talking about the carousel being removed. If you're obsessing on different individual components, like the strength of one ranking factor compared to another, that's a flawed approach. Mueller also says there can be multiple ways to achieve the same desired outcome. Every site does not have to follow the same blueprint, so to speak. So, Jessica, you certainly are giving consultation to executive teams on a regular basis. How does this concept, how would this concept fare as you are educating executive teams and getting buy-in from SEO tactics? It seems that that's a little bit of a vagueness there that wouldn't get into a regimen of tactics, would it?
Yeah, it's ironic to have a company full of engineers to say, hey, search is not a science, it's an art. Because then when you go take that message to the engineers at a company, they just don't get it. They can't get they struggle to get their mind around it. And so I think I describe it I try not to use the word art, but I do say it's a moving target, and that goes back to it changes. I think I wrote down things changed over time is what he said. So if things are changing over the time, science doesn't change quite as fast as SEO. And a lot of the changes in SEO are invisible behind the scenes. They're never announced. So he is right. It is a bit of a science a bit of an art. And you need to have experience to know how to paint your SEO picture or strategy or tactic implementation, that sort of thing.
I liken it as a recipe. And you can make a chili with a lot of different types of different types of seasoning, right? And you got to know what those seasonings actually do, okay? And that's one of the most important parts. You just don't dump a lot of pepper in there. You don't dump a lot of paprika in there, unless you like that. But you got to figure out.
I'm learning so much today. So many things I've done wrong.
No, don't click on the email and don't dump a crap ton of paprika into the chili. You have to understand what those factors are, but every site has its own blueprint. And those ranking factors are still strong signals, but it's the mixture of those for this entire, here's a word for the day, gestalt of the site. Woo! There's a wow word for it.
Yeah, and when I think of the formula changing, your sound guy would appreciate this. I think of it as a soundboard and how there's all these different dials that can be pushed up and pushed down to change the sound. I think of Google as doing that with all these different factors over time. Today, this factor may be ranked high, but tomorrow it may be a little lower and something else will be bumped up. And so the sound you're getting or the results you're getting are going to be different depending on how the levers are adjusted each day.
Oh my. This is scary to hear. Google.
I love it. It's perfect.
He totally got it back there.
Yeah, you're never going to get it right. Everything's moving, and you have to continually adopt best practices. Gary Ish also added to the discussion, saying that Google takes user feedback into consideration when shaping its algorithm. All algorithm updates are tested on real users before getting pushed live, and the tests are conducted through live experiments where one set of users get the new algorithm and another set doesn't. So we're constantly being tested on. We've been told that for a decade. And that's par for the course here. So there's not only just the engineering method and the engineering factors, but they're also user testing the experience as well. So,
Absolutely.
so that means that they're actually taking the ladle out of the chili and giving it to a said user to be able to see whether or not they like that taste. See? You'd think I'm hungry, but I'm not. I just had some wings. I'm just ready for fall. Honestly, I'm just ready for fall and chili, and that's where my mind's at. Pardon me. Sorry. Just kind of just wanted there. All right.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that story before we get off of that is you have to understand the different pillars of SEO and make sure your site scores as high as you can, or at least higher than the competition in those pillars. And I think that's a really important concept. That's the only kind of mathematical thing or scientific approach you can take, but it's not scientific in the way Google's describing it. We just want to do the best that we can across all of the pillars. And I know in my book, I actually talk about the different pillars. And I use this when I'm training all these different teams. So I hope it's okay to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll just show it really fast here. These are 10 pillars of SEO. And the black pillars are those tactics and strategies that influence the actual rankings on your site. And these are the operational pillars that are related to how your site, how you implement all these changes on the site. But these are the ones that are the soundboard that's constantly adjusting. So when I talk to developers, I talk about you can score each of these different pillars, you versus the competition, developers, writers, social media marketers, all these different roles that influence directly or indirectly these black pillars.
That's right. I actually use the euphemism of an equalizer bar, is that you can actually bring up content and have a lower level of inbound links, right? You can also bring up the links, and so it's a push and pull.
That's what they're doing based on like the spam they're seeing, the quality of sites that are showing up. It's always adjusted. Back years ago, they used to say, look, we have hundreds of engineers, they probably have thousands working on the formula. It changes every day. So I think there are little tweaks to it on a very consistent basis, especially now that they have the AI applied to it.
Exactly. All right. So with that, we're certainly going to link this podcast to the full interview, because we're going to unpack a number of those pillars and how to actually get those pillar concepts across to the executive team. But we also want to make sure that we touch base on the Google update for you, July 20th, 2020. There's nothing. I'm not going to report a darn thing. So that's something different here for this month. It's been calm since the high spikes in the beginning, or the end of June, I should say, which was entirely unexpected, seeing what we've been through for months. But we will keep you informed as things change. But have a breather. It actually looks good for right now. So with all that, that is the news from Edge of the Web. Make sure to check out make sure you check out the entire full interview with Jessica Bowman. Link to this podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and get updated when we premiere videos and when we go live next on our show. From all of us over the Edge, stay safe, stay well, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.